Hey folks, welcome to Gateway API uh, late APAC/EU time zone meeting for June 23rd, 2025. As always, this is a Kubernetes meeting, so we all behave by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, which loosely sums up as be nice to each other. We got quite a few updates about where things are at in the GEP iteration phase, since that's where we're at in our release at the moment. Rob, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. We are, I guess if you open up the milestone, I think unfortunately we did a pretty bad job of communicating this next step. I think a lot of people saw the first two dates and understandably missed the next one, which is theoretically 24 hours from today. It sounds like very few people, potentially no one, is going to be ready for today, tomorrow, 24 hours from now. Um, and so, given that, I think that, our lack of communication around this suggests that bumping this out by either end of week, maybe end of week seems fair, or I don't know if anyone on the call has an opinion on what is a reasonable timeline here. We are trying to the balance we're trying to hit here is the longer we delay anything, it's the longer any given release takes to get out, and the more painful it is to miss a release, right? And so ideally we want to be, getting out 3 releases a year, but that takes pretty tight timelines in this window. Um, so yeah, that's the guardrails we're working within. It seems like we do have to bump this timeline back at least some because just hadn't communicated this broadly enough. I don't know, any opinion with how much time is enough time for this?
I
I'm
think
hoping that most people who submitted a GEP already have some pretty strong ideas for what an API would look like. Um, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, I think end of the week seems reasonable. I mean, I've got my one to finish as well. I'm also not done. Yeah, I've been busy reviewing everyone else's stuff too. So this is for yeah, proposed API changes. So this covers standard, like moving to standard GEPs as well if there are any changes, which there shouldn't really be, but in this case we do. Yeah, but I think Candace, you had your hand up next.
The only thing that I would like to mention is that we have so many things to review. We really pulled in a lot to try to accomplish in this release, and it might be better if we dropped something that was not going to happen.
I
Rather, even if we extended the date. Um, I in fact, I think we sort of push to merge um, even the first half of the gap, the what is it, the y and the
the
four
provisional
release?
gaps, yes.
Yeah, the provisional gaps. Um, so I wouldn't want to see the second part pushed and rushed
Yep.
um,
So
either.
remember that this deadline is not that the API design is merged. The deadline is that the API design PR is opened. That's all. So we just need to have the PR opened so that we can have time to talk about it.
But we don't have a deadline for when it has to be merged, or we
Yes,
do?
we do.
We do. It's
July
the
Actually,
last
22nd.
one. Yeah.
Okay. So that gives us less than, what is it, less than 3 weeks, with a lot of people maybe on vacation over the next month, to review 7 different chunks of
yep,
stuff.
Yeah. I
yep.
agree. The vacation bandwidth thing is definitely going to be a challenge.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm going to be on vacation soon too. So like, you know, if we don't get changes into the auth gap in the next couple of weeks, then I won't be making them in time. So, yeah, so I agree that the vacation thing is going to be a challenge. As Rob said, though, like we did build this timeline by working backwards. By working backwards from about when we wanted to release. We need to make sure that we allow time for proper API review, for conformance tests to be built, for a bunch of other stuff like that. So yeah, like we don't want to push it out too much, but and like I think your point about dropping things from scope, Candice, is fair, but the way that we're trying to sort of be as fair as possible about what, if anything, gets dropped from scope is to have things meet these milestones. So so that's why like I'm okay with us pushing this out by sort of to the end of the week. That is the deadline for opening a PR with the API changes you want to make. And for people who can't, if we have changes that cannot open gaps that can't do that, then those gaps will need to be moved out of the release, and we can pick up work on it later. I 100% agree that it's a lot of change to review. But yeah, like if we want to be able to do more releases per year, we've got to get better at this. So we've got to get better and more practiced at making changes and having quicker discussions and some other things like that. And if this is as quick as we can go, then we need to know that, because that then sets, how many releases we can do a year. So so like I would like us, from my point of view, I would like to see us, push out this deadline to the end of the week. So that would be, let's call it, I reckon maybe sort of Friday morning, US time or Pacific time or something like that, or Friday lunchtime Pacific time, just to pick a time on the Friday. That's Saturday for me, so I won't be online, but I will definitely have I will have my PR open by then. And I would certainly encourage everyone to sort of get things open sooner rather than later. I would definitely like to see, like, for my one, for the client cert validation, like a verification, that one does require API changes that for us to move forward here. And so like we do need to see those API changes soon, because I think we'll need to talk about those, because they will have, any API changes we make to handle this will probably have impact in what we might do for some of the off cluster gateways and other things that involves TLS. So so I guess does anyone else have opinions on what's on extending the timelines a little bit for this open your PR and get it ready for review? Did you have anything more?
Yeah, I guess just like, so I don't have a pending experimental feature in this release. But just like as an anecdotal point, during the past release cycle, I found this phase to be the most difficult and time consuming. I guess I'm a little bit surprised looking at the schedule now. We had only allocated like a week for this. So yeah, I guess just I would propose at least like after or like at end of the next meeting. So like next Tuesday or something like that, to give folks just a little bit more time.
Yeah,
if we feel it's necessary, but just anecdotally, yeah, this phase is hard.
no, I agree. This is a difficult phase. I think one of the things I'm concerned about is if we bump this by a week, that's that much less time to review. And I think the review cycles back and forth are really challenging. This timeline is really about getting, an initial proposal up that can be reviewed. I don't know. It's really tough to find enough time to fit this in. I can be okay with a week from now, basically, as a target. I don't know. Nick, I don't know what your opinion is.
Well, I guess it
Yeah,
also
so
depends on vacations, right? Like if like if some
Yeah.
reviewers are going to be on vacation, then better get it earlier than later.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, so yeah, like as I said, I am leaving on 3rd of July AU time for a couple of weeks vacation. So that's a Thursday, which is a Wednesday for all of you. So yeah, once that's done, I will basically be like out for a fair chunk of the rest of the review cycle. So yeah, I mean, obviously, if we end up having nothing to go into the release because everybody's missed all the deadlines, then that's a big problem. But like having some deadlines at least gives us a way to talk about this. I think, yeah, like I'd be sort of okay with the after the meeting next week. That is quite a bit of extra time. Again, this is just for opening the PR, so like sooner is way better because it's the reviewing backwards and forwards that takes the time. As much as actually writing the gap. Yeah, Rob.
Oh, sorry, I did not mean to have my hand still up. But yeah, I agree.
Okay, so proposal on the floor is after the meeting time next week. That's Tuesday morning Pacific time.
Yeah, it's basically bumping out the deadline by 1 week.
Yep. I
Yeah.
don't think anyone is at this point is proposing that we bump out the implementable deadline of July 22nd. So that just means like, yeah, we're moving this deadline around so that we have a bit more time to actually get the PRs opened. But that does not mean that we're bumping out the you got to get this finished by then timeline.
Yeah.
So can I just so I saw Ian's thumbs up there. Can I get some thumbs up from folks, please, if you agree? I'm seeing general thumbs ups, so let's mark it noted as we were bumping.
I didn't ask for thumbs down.
Okay, if you want to thumbs, if you are, so yeah, let's check for thumbs down. That's fine. So Candace, I assume you are thumbs down.
Yes. There's no
Yep.
thumbs down
Okay.
in reactions.
Yeah.
You have
So-
to click the ... for the more reactions
Yeah.
thing, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Very-
Yeah.
Yeah. So Candace, is your opinion that we shouldn't extend at all, or that we should? What do you think? We should just drop things.
So if we extend it to the 1st of July, are we going to be extending any other things past? I mean, that gives us literally
No. So
21 days to review all of these.
Yep. Yeah,
maybe
that's
I
true.
see.
Like, yeah, no, we are not talking about extending anything else. The point being that, like, yeah, we're going to give a bit of flex here, but like, if things aren't merged by the 22nd, then they will be dropped. If my thing doesn't merge by the 22nd, which is possible at this point, then it'll be dropped. And H2P and North South Auth will not make this release. Like, yeah, like the the 22nd is the hard cutoff date.
And there's also, I guess, a bit of, let's say, so like we don't expect that every single person who is involved is going in Gateway API is going to be reviewing every single one of these necessarily. That's why we tried to solicit reviewers early on in the process to hopefully get like 1 or 2 folks to like champion and lead reviews for each of these features. So hopefully that helps distribute the work a little bit. But in the case that like one feature becomes particularly contentious in like API review, then like, yeah, some of the reviewers might need to make some tough decisions and prioritize, like, this seems like it's not going to get done. Let me make sure this other thing that's really close does get to an approved state.
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little, like I mentioned, I was surprised that some of the provisional GEPs got merged so quickly without very much review. And I don't want to see that happen with the implementable.
Yeah. So it is just to sort of re-clarify about what provisional is for. Provisional does not make any statements about like if you when or if the feature will go forward. It's literally just intended to be a way to call out like um is this a is this like is this do we have a shared understanding here that we can move forward with? And so that's the so I think that's the sort of key is that um yeah, those provisional ones being merged does not necessarily mean that that stuff is going to go ahead. It's just like there's enough agreement there that this might be a thing we want to do, and that there's no disagreement in the provisional gap about the language or lack thereof. And so like that's sort of the only guarantees that there are for provisional. Like again, like some of the ones that have merged in as provisional right now, I think there's a reasonable chance that they don't make it. Yeah, in particular, client IP session persistence. Right now, it seems like there's not a lot of data plane support for doing that actual feature. And so, like, if we can't have 3 implementations with preferably 2 data planes that are willing to or able to implement that feature, then like it won't be able to move forward, right? Like that's the usual requirement is that we need to have commitment from a few implementations that yes, they'll do it, and it needs to be possible in a couple of data planes. And so if it's not the case, then it won't be. Then that one won't move forward. So again, provisional is not. We are definitely going to do this. To some extent, provisional is a bit like sandbox in the CNCF. Like it's like, yep, this is a thing, and we do some light review, but the big gate is at implementable. Leo?
I just wanted to ask a question. Do we have like say this one of the gaps doesn't get in? Like, do we have any standby things we could potentially include, or? I
Not
mean,
currently.
there's a balance, right? Because obviously one of them is like we have too many things to review, but the other one is like we don't want it to release with not a lot of features. So it's just throwing it out loud. I don't have any opinion, but I know some people want to get some stuff.
Yeah, when I know earlier in the cycle we had discussed the idea of suggesting to authors of proposals that did not make the cut that they could try to put make a best effort and get something through. And if there was space left over at the end because something else fell through, then we would accept them. I don't know if that communication ever happened. I know there was
I
concern.
don't believe it did. I was one of the ones that was suggesting that might be useful, but I think that it's also kind of it works in one failure scenario, it does not work in others. So like if proposal authors like fail to complete an initial provisional gap or fail to complete an API design proposal and something drops out early on, then having a backup there could work. But if something takes too long in the review cycle because reviewer bandwidth is constrained, then adding something and asking for urgent reviews at the very end is a terrible idea. Like that doesn't work there.
Yeah, I think the time for backup gaps was before now, basically. Like yeah, if we are missing, if things miss after now, then there's no point adding more because as Mike says, then there's not going to be a reviewer bandwidth to review them anyway. Yeah. That's the reason that things get dropped from now on is because they're not good. We don't have enough bandwidth, so there's no point adding extra things.
Yeah, that's fair.
I also want to just clarify that like provisional gaps it's not agreement on a solution necessarily, it's agreement on the problem statement.
Yep.
I think that's a really important distinction there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And the other thing that it's really important to call out with is there is technically there are no provisional gaps in general. Merging gaps in general as provisional is not bound to the release cycle. So like once we get past the sort of the July 22nd date, if folks have other things like you can open PRs for stuff to move to provisional, it's just that it won't get much review bandwidth because everyone's going to be busy with reviewing everything else. But like we can be doing provisional stuff sort of out of cycle or on odd stuff, as long as it's provisional only. But like provisional only is, as Shane says, like how, what, and why, not sorry, what and why, not the how. Like no API design.
Yeah, there have been conversations with other folks interested in pushing things for the 1.5 cycle of like, hey, if you want to get an early start on this, like start working on provisional gap. Like it's not that stage because there's no API changes where like we're not shipping a thing, like that's not gated by the cycle. It's just for the things that we are shipping, we want to make sure that that's in.
It's too late for this cycle, but I think this was the first cycle where we had something effectively fall out of a release as it was in provisional state or as it was targeting provisional state. And that has made me think that maybe we should have a wider funnel to provisional. And then as we understand more of the details in provisional, we can give a clearer aspect. We can have clearer voting, whatever, as far as what moves past provisional. Again, there's limited reviewer bandwidth. The risk of something like that is that you get like 20 PRs for different provisional ideas, and there's not enough bandwidth for that. But the problem we ran into this time, at least, is by cutting the list before we even got to provisional, we missed a pretty significant disconnect in terms of what would be implementable. I think some of us, including myself, looked at a gap and said, okay, well, this has a name I recognize. It must be referring to the same thing I think of, but no, it's completely different, concept of session affinity or persistence, whatever, right? And yeah, anyway, just learning for next time, I guess.
Yeah, that could also be a way to like show that you as an author have some commitment to it, is by doing the pre-work of having a provisional gap ready to go, like by a certain point in the release cycle, rather than like pitching an idea that doesn't have a gap yet. And maybe that's a way to kind of incentivize front loading some of that work in an async way, rather than trying to cram the whole process into this cycle.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that is a big bandwidth limit is the fact that approvers, me, Rob, Shane, and Mattia, do need to review basically everything, right? Like, so like one of us at least needs to review everything that happens, because we're the only ones who can /approve. We are one of the big constraints on bandwidth. That one of the reasons to do a lot of this cycle-based stuff is to sort of try and make it so that ideally, like, we don't need to do detailed approval reviews until it's closer to approval, so that we're not. But practically, how it's been working is that like we still need to keep an eye on things anyway, because it's easy to. Rob and I in particular have been doing this for quite a while, and we've both made plenty of mistakes, and a lot of the time we can really help people not make the same mistakes we did, and save everybody a lot of time and effort. So both of us, and Shane and Mattia, do keep an eye on the on everything basically that's happening, and so that can be time drain on us. But yeah, the more having stuff in provisional is really good. I think that the cluster IP gateways gap is a good example there. Like it's been sort of humming along in the background, stuff happening there for quite a while. They are hoping to push that one forward to experimental implementable in 1.5. But we'll have a whole lot of the discussion and stuff done for something that is pretty contentious, by the time we actually get to that state. And so, for folks who want changes that are, especially ones that are, are bigger and or more contentious, then starting earlier rather than later is good, because then, we can shortcut some of this. I think I probably want to time box this. We've spent half an hour on it already. I'd like to just quickly go through where everything is at. I probably want to. So as it stands, we are going to do an extension on the proviso that it's an extension of the open PR bandwidth, open PR deadline only. It is not an extension of the implementable merged PR deadline. So now, does anyone have any strong objection to that as it stands? Candace, I hear and acknowledge your feeling about like we should be dropping things, and I agree we should be dropping things, but I think that and it may be that we end up dropping stuff at the 22nd deadline, but I don't want to preempt that now personally. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think I would add to that if we chose to drop things, if they didn't have a PR open tomorrow, we may end up dropping a majority of experimental gaps,
Yes.
which is more than I would like.
Yeah.
You know, I think 1 or 2 may be inevitable to drop further, but I hate to just, you know, drop everything.
Okay, so I think so. Again, the current proposal on the table is that we'll extend this until the meeting next week. So that means that after the meeting will be the deadline. That is the 8 a.m. Tuesday morning Pacific time meeting. So at the end of the meeting will be the deadline, the 9 a.m. Pacific time next week on Tuesday. That's the 1st of July. So we definitely need to have PRs open by then. So yeah, for me, obviously, I need to have like a PR open and mostly reviewed by then because I'm going to be leaving 2 days later. So yeah, or the auth will miss again. So yeah, that doesn't mean you can't do it earlier. It just means you have to at least have done that by then. Okay, so I think we're going to mark that down as done unless anyone has any other comments. Okay, next up, we've got backend TLS policy. I think this one is worthy of an update by itself. So what's happened here is, so John had some feedback on backend TLS policy. He wanted to ensure that it covered some other use cases. After a bunch of backwards and forwardsing on a PR, we have split that gap. So his PR that added some changes to the existing backend TLS policy gap now has a minimal set of changes that don't do everything that he says in the top comment. The net effect is that it adds some language around how we may extend the behavior of backend TLS policy, and sort of adds a couple of language things around using service mesh style producer and consumer things for the service that you're targeting. But the current proposal is that the existing behavior of backend TLS policy is that you target a service in the same namespace as the backend TLS policy, and that when you do that, that tells a gateway implementation that this application that's running inside that app that's described by that service expects TLS in that way, and gives you some details about the shape. The extra thing that John wants to add is the ability to have a backend TLS policy sit in the same namespace as a gateway, and then refer to a service in another namespace. This is a consumer style policy, which is what as we talked about for service mesh. that sets the connection properties for the gateway as a client. That allows you to sort of to have a separation between the producer settings and the consumer settings. That one is a bit more contentious, and so it is a separate GEP. So that's this 3876 PR, and with 3875 being the GEP number. So this is basically a new GEP that adds this override behavior. So yeah, the idea is that we hopefully should be able to move the existing use case of backend TLS policy to standard in this release, assuming we can get conformance and the usual round of stuff. And then this new behavior becomes a new experimental feature in this release. Now, Candace, your backend TLS policy is you're the lead on that feature. Have you had a chance to sort of review the minimal set of changes that John has made to this GEP?
It doesn't look like he's made any changes that are. I don't think he's made any changes to the really wide set of changes that he made that I reviewed 3 times already.
No, so he backed out basically all of those changes, and there is like a much smaller set of changes that he has updated since then. He's left most of the goals and sort of rolled a lot of the changes back, and has removed most of the changes to add the new behavior. This just adds a bit of clarifying language, especially about. I think the biggest thing that John has changed is that now the existing GEP does not fully exclude mesh use cases and say we'll never do it. It says we won't do it now, and that backend TLS policy is not intended to be used is not intended to configure mesh transport layer TLS. And I think that I thought that language was pretty useful updates personally. So like, I don't want to put you on the spot. Like, if you haven't had much of a chance to have a look at it there, then that's fine. Like, please just have a look at it soon and tell us what you think. Make any changes that you would like to see. But like, request any changes you like. But to me, it looked like a much slimmer version that did seem like something we could maybe move to standard in this version.
I was taking a look at it while we were talking about the previous topic, and I don't see that. I still see a lot of changes to the original GEP. It's not
so to clarify,
minimal.
I think it went down from a couple hundred lines of code changed to 50-ish, in that ballpark. There are still some changes. I think a lot of the big changes, or in terms of lines of code difference, there's maybe 20 of them are talking about future plans, and then another 20 of them are talking about basically replacing a table that existed that basically combined route and gateway configuration to whether or not you should connect to a backend with TLS, and instead just focused on the protocol, which I think is a good clarification, because the actual route you're using doesn't matter as much as the protocol you're using. So yeah, those are the changes. I think they are much smaller now.
I think because this was a provisional GEP, I think that the changes that are made in here make this GEP go backwards. It's not provisional anymore, because people who have implemented it haven't implemented these changes that he's suggested.
I think I'd actually look at it the other way. I think this may actually be a little bit closer to how implementations actually ended up implementing it. It's more just so for example, the clarifications of adding service mesh, that's nothing related to how people have implemented it today. But then that thing that I mentioned about the kind of table showing route and gateway config to whether TLS should be used to the backend, I think most implementations I'm aware of are not, you know, focused on routes so much as they are focused on protocols and you know, whether TLS is terminated. I don't know. I don't know, but I don't think this changes much in terms of how this would be implemented. If anything, I think it just is more clarification for current and future implementers.
Yeah, I still think it's not minimal changes there. And it's very
guess-
hard for me to know like who's implemented it in what way. So I'm not really sure. I mean, that could as well be possible, what you're saying. But isn't it more possible that people would have implemented the way it was written originally for the last 6-8 months?
So yes, but like part of the thing. So John has implemented this. Like, so he personally wrote the code in Istio to implement this. And so that's what a lot of the things he's found have been because he went to implement this and found things that were unclear because we hadn't specified them in the thing when he went to implement it. So that's one of the reasons that I'm sort of willing to accept his feedback. Yeah, has actually implemented this. He wrote the code to implement this. I think the main updates here are just are about sort of again, it's just most of it is clarifying language. There's no I cannot see any actual behavioral changes here aside from the fact that we will extend it later. Like in this, actually, the reason I refer to this as a minimal set of changes is that it takes the huge changes that John wanted to make before, which was adding this whole other, adding a couple of extra fields, adding a mode thing, adding a sort of a producer override behavior, and pushes them all off to a separate GEP rather than trying to do them all in one big chunk. And this keeps largely the current basically the current behavior, where the current behavior is that the backend TLS policy describes the TLS that is running inside the app and configures the gateway accordingly. I think one of the biggest objections that John had was that we were adding that without a way to control, to have gateways be able to specify, no, I don't want to do that. Right? There's no in the current proposal, there's no way for gateways to sort of configure, I only want to make TLS requests that look like this. And so that way, if we do the thing that he's talking about, then there's a way for gateways to say, I only want to make TLS 1.3 connections. And the app can say, I only supply TLS 1.2. And then the gateway can say, well, in that case, I can't connect to you and this is not going to work. And you can actually put feedback onto some object somewhere that says this is never going to work. Rather than having it just not work silently. And so I think, like, I get what you're saying. Like, there are changes made, but but I cannot see any actual behavioral changes. It's not actually changing how backend TLS policy works as an object. So I mean, if you see behavioral changes, then that's cool. Like, but I haven't been able to find them, and I have done a pretty thorough read through of this. Like, I mean, maybe it's better that we take this one out of this meeting and you and I catch up on this separately, Candice, and we talk through where we think this is at. But I mean, I think the sort of the sequence of events here has been, John has raised some like sort of reasonable objections about stuff that we haven't covered, and then has made a big PR to attempt to resolve all of those issues. And I've said, hey, can you please back this back to like as small as possible a set of changes to the original GEP that you think, and moved his changes off to another thing. So, and so like I think he's come to the negotiating table here, and so that's what I would like us to sort of try and find a place where we can get something moving forward rather than having this just stall because we can't reach agreement. That's what I'm hoping to do.
Okay. What does it mean to have the GEP split? Do both of them have to be
No,
reviewed and
so
implemented?
So that means that this PR 3835 can go in. The original gap 1897 or whatever it is, can then be moved forward to standard in this release, as long as we have conformance tests and 3 implementations. The backend peerless policy as a feature by itself can be moved forward to standard, and the new gap can be experimental in this release, which adds fields and extra behaviors. And so that can be experimental, and it'll have a feature gate just like everything else to say, implementations don't have to do that thing yet. That's only experimental in this release. You can support just the standard behavior and come back and do the experimental once we are sure that that's what we want to do. And so that's the reason for the split, is to enable us for backend TLS policy as an object to move forward to standard, and the additional behaviors that John is talking about to stay in experimental.
It's basically like reserving a specific area and carving, saying like changes here maybe or like additive things here may be possible in the future without being a breaking change. It's the same way that for like the Go conventions for enums, where you say that like the current set of things defined here is not exhaustive and additional functionality may be added. Like we're basically doing a very similar thing here.
Yeah, I know what you guys are saying, but it's just that the review comments that I made, nothing that revolves around the review comments that I made has been changed substantially. So I don't see that there aren't going to be any behavioral changes, but I guess I will review it again for the 4th time. And
yeah, I understand.
it.
Like, I am also looking forward to being done with reviewing this one. If you would like to pair with me at some point and we can review it together, like I'd be more than happy to do that. Like, because I think, I think that maybe that would help here. But yeah, let's you do your own review and then ping me privately, and we can talk more about how we can keep this thing moving forward. Again, that's really the main thing I'm aiming for here, is to get us to a stage where we can actually move back into in its original use case forward to standard in this release. That's what I'm really hoping to do. And so that's everything I am doing on this thing is all around trying to get something that we can reach some agreement on and move it forward.
And I wrote it down here, but if there are no behavioral changes to the gap, then there should be no new conformance tests required, right?
Yes, that's 100% correct. There are no new conformance tests required. It does. The gap does suggest some additional conformance tests we might add for things later that are like where we had not fully described the behavior yet. But the conformance test PR that you have open is definitely sufficient to move things forward to standard.
Okay.
Like, we don't have to have full coverage of every possible thing to move a feature forward to standard. We need to have some conformance coverage so that we can be confident that implementations are behaving basically the same, and then we can add more as we go. We have done that before many times, and that's fine.
And we even explicitly say that patch releases, that's one of the things we can do, is add additional conformance tests for things.
Okay. Conformance tests are ready for review again.
Okay.
So
Awesome. Yep. No worries. Well, I think Mattia is back today. I will definitely. So he's sort of the maintainer who has the best knowledge of the conformance suite, since you wrote a lot of it. I will ping him about that one. I'll review it as well, of course, but I definitely would like him to have a look over it as well. And just so that we get as many eyes across as possible.
Candace, thank you for writing these conformance tests. Which implementation have you been running them against, or have you been running them against?
Envoy Gateway.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have a bit of a look as well. I think, I'm not sure about Forcillium yet. Okay, so Candace, are you right to follow up on that, and then you and I will chat after the meeting with any further things?
Yep.
Yep, awesome. Okay, so let's leave back in TLS policy there. We only got a few minutes left. Let's try and sort of go through everything else. So we've had a bunch of GEPs that did get merged to provisional: east-west auth, off-cluster gateways, default gateways, and client IP session persistence. I think off-cluster gateways and default gateways, those are both on Flynn. So those are, and they both sort of do require reasonably substantial API changes. So yeah, look, and client, as I said, client IP session persistence, there's some questions over implementability there. So I would definitely encourage everyone in these four to sort of start looking at what exactly are the API changes you want to make, and open a draft PR at the least earlier rather than later. Because showing people at least a sketch of the API changes or a description of the API changes you want to make, even if you don't have them like completely nailed down, is at least going to help people bring out any breaking comments or anything like that people are going to have earlier rather than later. There's no point spending days building an API that someone says, oh no, that I would never consent to that. I never accept that. So better to get a design sketch in. I'm going to probably try and open a draft with a description of what I'm trying to do with the auth today, even if it doesn't have full API design details, but it'll at least have a description and just some justifications as to why I'm trying to do things the way I am. Yeah, so, and then for the ones still in progress, we've got north-south auth, which is me, and we've got the client cert update, which is Arco. I'm actually don't think Arco's not on the call today, but yeah, Arco, if you're watching this recording, then I would really like to see this one earlier rather than later, because I think how we change the gateway config for client certificate verification is going to be important. We already have a field that configures some stuff here that is, I think, is it still experimental, Rob? I think it is.
Yeah, it is.
So we may need to drop an experimental gateway field here, which is bad. But but it is experimental. But yeah, like we may need to drop or solidly deprecate that thing and replace it with whatever's in here. So this one is really important, because this is, I think that we need to add some stuff to configure TLS more generally on the gateway, and that will have crossover with off-cluster gateways, very possibly. Maybe the consumer override parts of backend TLS policy, because if we're configuring the gateway as a client from the gateway itself, then that's also another thing that interacts with backend TLS policy as a consumer override policy. And yeah, it may also have some other TLS knock-ons. So we need to be really careful with this one. So yeah, we really need this PR open soon, because it'll have effects on some of the other PRs as well. Okay, then there are three other standard GEPs that need to sort of, that we need to nail down the change set, what we actually need change to move these forward. Supported features, HTTP retries, and adding name. I think retries and name are reasonably straightforward. They may just need some further solidification in the spec and maybe some conformance tests. Supported features is a bit more tricky, because it's like part of the conformance suite itself. But yeah, we really want to move that forward, so that then the ideal here is that supported features are required on a gateway class, and the conformance tests use the supported features on the gateway class rather than command line flags to figure out what features to run conformance tests, what extended features to run conformance tests for.
Yeah, can I ask another question here?
Yep.
So basically, Becca has already implemented this initial support, obviously not in a default mode, but and this is already merged. The question here is we have to put in scope that once it's core, mesh implementations are not really required to implement that, because they're not going to have a gateway class. So I'm just looking for kind of more guidance on how we actually want to tackle that. And then once we do, we're just going to make the changes to actually make the GEP big part of core. And yeah,
So yeah, so for mesh, there's nowhere to put supported features at the moment, because there's no mesh resource. I always hoped that we would end up with a mesh resource for exactly this reason.
I still think we might.
We may,
Like,
we
some-
may.
some funds work
Please,
is
look at
pending.
Flick's,
It
yeah.
might exist at the end
Yeah.
of this cycle.
But that said, to me, doing this for north-south, for the north-south use cases, like, and saying, hey, if there's a gateway class, the conformance test will use the gateway class for the non-mesh
Yeah.
profiles. Like, and making that the default for those ones seems to make sense to me. Rob, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I forget how you're structuring this. If you're still allowing features to be specified via flag across the board for this release, in which case, fine, no action needed. It's just whenever we remove that capability and require them to be on gateway class, we'd still need to leave some kind of carve out for mesh. So if you basically pass a flag that includes any mesh features, then we let you do it. But otherwise,
So what is right now implemented, and what I've been thinking is, like, right now it defaults to try and read from a gateway class, and if it unless you specify the flags, which obviously most of the conformance integrations today for implementation specify flags and profiles, but like assume like the next gen, like assume I'm changing one of this integration, you don't specify flags or profiles, so you default to read from the gateway class. And then the way I kind of helped Becca defining it is putting a mark on the like that's going to be used for the report, and then you would not be able to report if it's not generated now, which obviously we yet to turn this on, but the mark is ready. And then what we could do in the suit, and we could say, hey, if it's mesh, you are able to report with the mark. Does that make sense? And then like you kind of retain where you still have the option to run it with specified features for testing, like, but just for reporting or not.
yeah, I think that makes sense. So what you're saying is we either just don't generate a report altogether, or we generate a report and it's got some problem, some flag in it that says this was generated with flags and we should accept it or something like that.
No. So literally the suit you would not be able to call report from the suit.
Okay,
and,
I see. Yeah.
Obviously someone can just open and manually a PR. I'm not sure what's our guidance, but like, the suit report is like pretty comprehensive and nice to use. But yeah, we could just have a special mark of like, this was generated by, reading from gateway class, and this would, and then the badges and stuff would kind of read from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, as of today, like the conformance test is on the honor system anyway, right? Like, we do not have a way to ensure that the YAML that is submitted for PR is not hand edited in some way along the way, right? Like, there's nothing to stop you taking the thing and hand editing it. What that would mean, it'd be a breaking of the contract of conformance tests, in that we expect that you should be able to duplicate the exact results of that conformance test by running the procedure that is in the markdown file that is included with the conformance test. So like right now, because like we know each other pretty well, like we don't worry too much about that. But look, that is we're going to give people, like, we as maintainers are going to give people trust until somebody breaks it, right? Like, and then when that happens, then we will have to build things in there to, checksums or something, I don't know, that that sort of or some form of signing that puts somebody on the hook for ensuring that the generated report is the same as the one that was generated from the conformance suite is the one that was submitted. So yeah, that'd be something that I would go and look to upstream conformance to talk to about how that would work as well. But yeah, so I think that being able to mark the things as like, hey, this was produced with flags, like maybe might not be 100%, then that's pretty fair. But we've got Dave has his question that he's been patiently waiting for the entire time. And we are out of time, so I would like to just let Dave make his case, and then we can continue talking about supported features afterwards if anyone wants to stick around. Dave?
Hey, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
I have a PR that's been open for a while about optional ports on listener sets. So pinging people for review. This was pulled out of 1.3. into a separate PR. So
Okay.
that's it.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. Well, yeah, like I will check it out again today. So yeah, I think so Leo, like I think like the work that you and the others have done about getting supported features working better is great. Like I agree with the stuff you've done so far. But yeah, I think it's gonna like we can't really complete moving this off until you being the mesh leads sort of make a call here about where you want to go for, like if you want to add a mesh thing to do that, or how you want to treat that, right? Like that's like I don't want to make that decision for you.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So just asking for guidance, like, so in order to kind of make this formal standard, right? Like, except from like the cleanup PRs for the implementation, which is mostly there. So because it's not really a feature, right? It's not like something so it's just like changing the gap, adding documentation, and adding further documentation about mesh not being required to actually implement it. Does that feel like a full set of things we need to do?
I think the way that I would phrase it is not that like mesh is not required, because I don't want to set the expectation that like meshes would never be expected to do this. It's more of that like it will be expected at some point in the future for meshes to be able to report this. So we just do not have a place in the resources that meshes are typically using that currently supports this today. So basically like a placeholder of like expect this to be required in the future.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
mesh.
that's what I planned. I just like
Cool.
what I meant is like we have to incorporate this language so we don't like accidentally make meshes like not conforming because of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's both
Actually-
don't make meshes not conformant, and also like make sure that it's known that this will be expected in the future. This is not a forever exemption.
Yep. That does remind me though that there is another PR that I opened. Hang on, let me find it. That is about updating the policy for the implementations page, which actually kind of affects conformance a little bit. So if anyone is willing to stay around for a little bit, I can quickly walk everyone just through the proposal here. So I'm just finding the right link. Let me find my PRs. I think I may have forgotten that shit.
I have it.
Yes,
Odds and notes.
Yeah, thanks. Great. Find my right tab. It's not one. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, this one. So this one is updating implementations.md with a removal policy, like how you can end up being removed from the implementations page. Right now we've got a lot of implementations on there, some of which haven't been updated in a while. So to summarize, the changes are that if you don't submit a conformance report sort of regularly, then you will be moved to a stale list for the moment, and then in the 1.5 timeframe, things that are in the stale list that have not submitted a conformance test will be removed from the implementations page. So the PR includes a written policy for, I got to do some updates here clearly, but it includes a policy for what constitutes conformance, and like when we will do we're going to add a page review process, which will be done by a maintainer at least a month after the release. That is when we will actually go through and check what conformance reports have been submitted and which implementations meet the various definitions. Now, there are 3 states: conformant, partially conformant, and stale. So conformant passes a conformance test where all of the claimed features pass their tests. Partially conformant submits a conformance report where some of the tests pass, but doesn't have to be all of them. That's like you're trying. And then stale is you have not submitted a conformance report recently. And so there's nothing wrong with being partially conformant. If your implementation has something it can't do yet, then that's fine. But the intent here is to sort of give people a little bit more incentive in terms of the implementations page to sort of keep things being updated. The most current reason for this is that I was not aware Kubernetes as a project has a policy around linking to around third-party information included in the docs to sort of make it so that Kubernetes as a whole is not king-making or not choosing things. I think that by and large, we've kind of been okay with that because this is an implementations page that sort of clearly calls out, hey, this is where you go to see implementations of the API. But part of that is that we need to have a process for managing it, and we currently don't, aside from, hey, do whatever you like. And so this is me adding that so that we can avoid falling foul of SigDoc coming in and saying, this page is not compliant, you're going to have to remove the whole thing or something. Does that make sense, Mike?
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize that. Yeah, you were talking to me mostly.
Yeah, you're the last person unmuted. That's all. So yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So I just wanted to sort of get all that recorded. I would strongly recommend everyone go and have a review of this, especially if you're managing implementation. One thing that was called out to me is that a couple of cloud provider implementations do have some tests that they failed today, and say they will be partially conformant because there are some core, which I think they're actually core tests that are difficult for the load balancers in clouds to do. And so they will move to partially conformant. But that's one of the reasons why I put the partially conformant thing in there so that, you know, like you can stay on the page, like, and hopefully this will help folks working at those cloud providers to be able to say, hey, we really need resources to deal with this problem, please.
Precisely. Like having a formal structured policy and like this is what happens and this is the timelines. Yes, that absolutely helps motivate funding for getting this stuff resolved.
Yep. So yes, thank you everybody for your attention. I think that is it. Unless anybody has anything else they want to ask about, we are like 10 minutes over time, so we should go. Okay. Thanks everyone. See you later.
Carry
Bye.
on.
Thanks.